On today's show, I'll be telling you about some incredible courses and products that my friend Richard Byrne, author of Free Technology for Teachers, has. You can take a look at coolcatteacher.com/edtech. And at the end of the show, I'll tell you about several of my favorites.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today we have with us one of my favorite people, Richard Byrne, and we're talking about 5 free tech tools to try in social studies lessons. Now, I will include a link in the show notes and in the pre and post roll for this podcast episode to an amazing course that Richard does have, as well as some other courses that he has online that you may want to join in. So, Richard, where do we start?
Well, where do we start? So a little bit about my background, I think, for folks who don't know. I taught high school social studies for the better part of 10 years and also worked in special education for a little bit. So this course is right up my alley, or this topic is right up my alley, of using technology in social studies. That's how I got into the educational technology field, really, was through social studies. So I want to share a few of my favorite tools that I think some folks might be familiar with, and some other people might be brand new to them. So if you don't mind, I'll just jump right into my first one.
Let's go for it.
What do you think?
Yep.
So this is one that's right under everyone's nose whenever they go to Google, but whenever I share it, people are like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. It's Google Books. Now, there's 2 versions of Google Books. There's Google Books where you could go and buy a book, but I'm talking about the research tool for Google Books that gives you access to millions of titles that are in the public domain. And for a social studies teacher, a history teacher who needs to give his or her students a little more access to historical articles and books, that's a great resource. You can clip sections out of the public domain books using the tools that are built right into Google Books. I used to make bookshelves in Google Books for all of my students. In my course load, I'd have 120 to 130 kids at a time, and our school library had about 35 books on the Civil War. So, I'm a little short there. So I'd go to Google Books, I'd make a bookshelf in Google Books, and I'd say, hey, kids, here you go. Here's a whole bunch of resources that are in the public domain that you can look at and read them online. You can print them out if you want to print them. So that's one. And like I said, it's right under your nose. Just go to books.google.com and you can start using it.
Yeah, and it's so much easier now to read those books, in a more readable format than back when you were using it, right?
Yeah, when I first started using it, you had to read it on your computer in your web browser. Now there's an ebook option. Of course, there's a PDF download option. There's many ways to read it in a way that doesn't require you to sit at your laptop or sit at your Chromebook and stare at the screen the whole day.
Cool.
So that's a really neat tool. Another one that is kind of an update on, I would say, the standard play in the social studies teacher's playbook, and that's the Timeline project, right? I think going back since the dawn of time, people have been making timelines, right? TimelineJS, which is a free tool that your students can use and you can use to make a multimedia timeline. The reason that I really like it is that, number one, it can be a collaborative tool. The way you build a timeline in it is you actually make a spreadsheet and you just input into the spreadsheet template from TimelineJS a link to a YouTube video if you want to include a YouTube video. If you want to include a location in Google Maps, you can link to that. If you want to include a picture, you can link to a picture that's in your photo albums or anything that's in the public domain. And it's also not restricted to AD/BC format. You could use CE, BCE. It's a very, very flexible tool. So I really like TimelineJS, and if you want to see examples of it, CNN even uses it to make some of their multimedia timelines. So it's a really, really neat tool, free tool. check it out.
Very cool.
Now that tool, like I said, that's kind of the timeline is kind of a standard in our history and social studies teacher playbooks, right? Something that's new, and I'm really excited about, and I think the entire internet is excited about right now, is augmented reality and virtual reality, right? Those technologies have been around for a long time. A couple of decades they've been available, but now they're much more accessible than ever before. One of the services that I'm really excited about is a service called Metaverse.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, Metaverse Studio. The way that I've been describing it for the last 6 months or so is like it's build your own Pokemon Go, but with an academic slant, right? So when I think about using Metaverse Studio in the social studies classroom, I often think about, could you make a historical Pokemon Go for your local community? Have your students build their own augmented reality game in which the players go out and they look for landmarks in town or in your county. And when they get to that landmark, they get a little digital prize and they can watch a video about that place, or they can learn more information about that place. So it's a really, if you've played Pokemon Go or you have a child in your life who played Pokemon Go, that's the concept behind Metaverse Studio, because you can build your own game like that and build in an educational slant to it. One of the things that those folks are doing at Metaverse Studio is they're really trying to support teachers as much as possible. They have a fantastic Facebook page for teachers that I'd encourage you to check out if you have a chance. So
awesome.
It
Love that.
Like you've been using it too, Vicki.
My students started programming in augmented reality in November, and I've done some work for Metaverse, so I have to disclose that, but I love it. It's just fantastic. And I think there's all kinds of potential. And plus, there's even some prepackaged stuff that other teachers have created that you can play. But, the whole goal, as you and I often talk, is to get the kids creating. So love that. Okay, what's your next? So
my next, I'm going to go out of order for my notes because of what you just said. So speaking of creating, and when it comes to virtual reality, it's great to sit back and take kids on a Google expedition, which was going to be one of the things I was going to talk about anyway. Google Expeditions is great. You can show kids places that can't be displayed in a 2D format. A flat map is great, but going and looking at it in Google Expeditions, that's a whole nother experience, right? But I want kids to create things. So I like the Google Cardboard Camera app and the Street View app, particularly the Street View app if you have access to a 360 camera. If you don't, it's still an awesome app. But the Google Cardboard Camera app will let you and your students make your own 360-degree imagery that you can then view inside virtual reality in a VR viewer, whether that's the Google Cardboard viewer or any number of hundreds of virtual reality viewers that are on the market now. The Google Cardboard Camera app in particular, I really like because I can narrate what's being displayed to my students, and the Google Cardboard Camera app now makes it very easy to share your imagery either publicly or privately. If you want to just share it with your students and not share it for the whole world, or you want students to share it without making it entirely public, the Google Cardboard Camera app is a really neat way to do that. And I'll give you an example of how I've seen it used by a school. I visited a school in New Hampshire last summer where the teacher had decided that for part of his geology unit, actually, he was going to have the kids go out with that app and record some 360 panoramas and talk about some geological features. So a little extension outside of your typical social studies class with a Google Cardboard Camera app. So those are the 5 free tools I think any social studies teacher should try out in 2018 if you haven't tried them yet. I could go on for days, as you know, about tools that are free and available for teachers. But I think those 5, if you're a social studies teacher who's looking to infuse some new things this year in the new school and the new calendar year, that's a good place to start.
So, Richard, as we finish up, I will link to the course in the show notes. I am recommending your history course with technology. Tell us a little bit about the course.
So the course is Teaching History with Technology, and it's really based on partly my own classroom, my own social studies lessons, and then all 5 of the tools that I mentioned today, but many, many others. And it's not just a how to use the tool. I'm really trying to encourage people to think about how they use the tools. And so I include examples and suggestions every week in the course on here's how this could work in your classroom. Here's a couple of activities that I'd recommend trying out in your classroom. And
Cool. So teachers, there's lots of great tools out there that we can use that we really couldn't even, these are things we couldn't even do before. And that's the greatest use of technology, is to be able to do things that we never could do before, not just to substitute, but to actually have new things and reinvent how we teach. And I will link again to the show notes, but thank you, Richard. And I love all your stuff, and keep it coming. So today on the show, I'm sharing with you some of my favorite products from my friend Richard Byrne, who authors Free Technology for Teachers. He has several courses. He has G Suite for Teachers, which really tells you a lot about the Google products. He has his practical EdTech group and even a coaching group where you get some extra help and tips from him. Now, if you're a history teacher, you definitely want to check out the Teaching History with Technology. Now, these products are paid, and I do get a small affiliate fee if you sign up. It's no extra charge to you, but if you do sign up, then I'll get that. Or you can just Google those from my friend Richard Byrne, or just go to coolcatteacher.com/edtech. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.